everybody, welcome to AmateurCast, the show where we pretend to know what we're talking about. My name is Sebastian Limon. I'm an uncredited co-founder of Amazon, and I'm joined with two friends of mine, Kolby Lipis.
Hi.
And Paloma Zubieta.
Hey, y'all. I didn't know I was friends with Jeff Bezos.
Seb,
Yes.
you need to understand that
What?
Jeff Bezos is literally
Is
the
not
last
a
person
good-
on Earth we want to get
yeah.
sued by.
Listen to me, Jeff Bezos, if you're listening to this, I will sue you. I deserve credit. I deserve credit for coming up with Amazon. Kidding me? I don't know. Jeff, if you're somehow listening to a movie podcast made by
gosh.
three lonely people, then get lawyered up because I'm coming for you. Anyway.
We're 6
Moving on.
episodes in and we're challenging the richest man in the world to a legal duel.
He is the most interesting man in the world. Jeff Bezos. That man, he had a glow up. Have you seen those memes of him getting a glow up? Why is this now about Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, so today's episode's about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. And the rise of
Please
Amazon.
invest in our show.
Yes, please sponsor us if you can. No, of course not. Anyways, how are we doing, you guys? We good?
Yeah,
Good.
You sure? That
kind
was
of tired.
me.
I stayed up watching New Moon.
You what?
I stayed up watching Twilight New Moon. So,
Oh god, yeah. that's
Amazing.
right.
yeah.
The first one or just like all of them?
Cinematic
No, the
masterpiece.
second one.
That's the only one I've seen.
Really?
And it was so boring.
You've
Didn't
seen
see
Twilight
the
2,
most
but not the
iconic
others?
first one.
I've seen the second one and I've seen the final battle of the last one.
Oh gosh, so
That's all I've seen.
traumatized.
You know what? I've seen that scene too, the final battle scene.
Yeah, it's still traumatizing.
Kind of cool and kind of dumb, and then spoiler alert, it's a dream. What?
It was
I hate
only
it.
just a dream.
It's so dumb. Anyway,
So today's episode's about Twilight.
today's episode is about
In case you
Twilight.
couldn't tell. Just
Ignore
But-
what we said in the last episode.
What comes before Twilight? The sunrise.
Oh, hey! That was actually a good segue.
Colby, would you like
That
to
worked.
would you like to introduce what we're
Oh,
talking
God.
about for this episode?
Yeah, we're talking about the Before Trilogy. We're talking about Richard Linklater's The Before Trilogy. If you haven't heard of it, I mean, you probably shouldn't listen to this first, but if you haven't heard of it, it consists of Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight, each of them starring and also co-written by Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Delpy.
Delpy. Yeah.
Delpy.
Julie Delpy.
Sexism.
I'm sorry, Julie. Basically, they are the three movies each take place exactly 9 years apart, and they were each released exactly 9 years apart, and they each basically take place on one night with this same couple at different points in their lives. So in Before Sunrise, they meet for the first time. Before Sunset, they reunite for the first time in 9 years, and then in Before Midnight, we see where they've been for the last 9 years and sort of how their time together has resulted. They're a really, really interesting look at not only different stages of a relationship, but also different stages of life and coming of age. And we're going to delve pretty deeply. I almost said Delpy that time.
I know.
We're going to dive pretty deeply. Starting with Before Sunrise. So, what was your guys' first experience with Before Sunrise? Let's get into it.
Yeah. Ladies first.
Oh, okay. I had heard about it like around going into college, and I only heard good things, as you know, it deserves. And I couldn't have fallen in love so much with the movie, almost as much as Lady Bird, you know, but the way that, I mean, anyone can even, okay, I need to understand or figure out how to say this, but the way that their conversations are so real and like so natural, it doesn't even feel like they're acting. And the actors themselves have talked about their method of acting is that they don't like approve of their acting if they can sense that they're trying to act. And I think that really shows in their performances in all three movies. And I think that's why they're so well loved, is how real,
Just well received.
Yeah, how real the relationship feels.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, I've heard of these movies before. Definitely, before. But I'm sorry. No, but I didn't know how special the first one was going to be. Like, I mean, I've heard that they take place years apart. It's by Richard Linklater. It makes sense. He's made Boyhood. He's experimented a lot with time and with coming of age and even with love. And so I wanted to check it out. I bought the Criterion like earlier this year or late last year, and I did not expect to fall in love with the first film so much as I have, to the point where Paloma bought a poster of the movie for my birthday. But yeah, I was completely transported from the beginning. By the way, the plot really is simple as two people meeting on a train, having a spark of connection, and leaving off the train to Vienna, and we're just seeing them connect before
and they just spend one night
the sun
together.
rises.
Yeah.
The whole thing takes place in like one night, like 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah, basically, it takes place in a span of a night, and before they depart the next day, and it's that simple and is that great. This wouldn't have worked if it weren't for the connection between Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, because it's electrifying. I've said that many times with, like, I don't know, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, or Jack Lemmon and exactly. But Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are insanely good together. The contrast of the American boy and the European girl, his American accent, her French accent. Would it be a French accent? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cute accent too.
She's from Paris.
Yeah, and just not only the contrast of people from different countries, but the different genders, obviously, and the different conversations that arise, and how different they are, but how similar they feel about certain things. Every time I watch it, it's almost like you're seeing friends again that you haven't seen in a while. And then when the movie closes, it's almost like you're kind of like saying bye to them. Until next time, guys. It's like, it feels like it's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
You really can't say or truly communicate without experiencing it for yourself. How it feels to be with these two people, like a fly on the wall, as they kind of connect during that night. Yeah, to me, it's probably my second favorite film ever made. If City Lights doesn't exist or didn't exist, this would probably be my favorite movie of all time, next to, I don't know, Raging Bull or something. But I know, very different movies. But yeah, that's like my whole thing with it. What about you, Kolby?
My first time watching it was pretty recently. Like 2 weeks ago, I was considering buying the Criterion collection, which, spoiler alert, I did. I have it right here. I've heard notes in case I need to reference it, because it comes with like a little credits book, which is really nice. But I was considering buying the Criterion box set, and I looked on Amazon and it was like expensive, and I was like, all right, well, I should probably watch the first one first to make sure I like it. And so it was super late at night. I had just finished watching Moonlight, so I was in store for a very emotional double feature. I think it was like 1 a.m, and I started before sunrise, and I was kind of expecting to fall asleep to it because I knew how conversational it was.
Basically, like My Dinner with Andre with two.
I was just going to mention that, yeah. Exactly. And I had seen My Dinner with Andre like a week before this and liked it, but found it hard to keep up with because it's so laid back. And I was just had my mind blown by Before Sunrise. I knew it was going to be good. I knew I was going to like it. People had recommended it to me before, but I didn't think it would be perfect.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's one of those movies that I love, that I watched it so late at night for the first time because it's such a dreamlike, kind of ethereal, otherworldly movie, and that's actually referenced by the characters in the movie, how otherworldly it feels. The only other time that I've had that kind of feeling watching a movie for the first time is 2001, which is
Whoa,
a pretty huge comparison, but I feel like this movie's actually pretty worthy of it. Yeah, Before Sunrise is incredible, and I was just blown away by it. And literally, the minute it was over, I ordered the Criterion box set and then watched the other two the next day.
that's awesome.
I really, really fell in love with Before Sunrise really fast. And like Seb, I think it's probably in my top 10 favorite movies. I just need to give it a rewatch, to be fair to it. But I'm pretty sure it's in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I don't know, like, you mentioned dreamlike. Yeah, it's very, like, everything, it's not dreamlike that it's, like, unbelievable, though. It's like, almost like, the other movie that I can kind of compare this to in terms of, like, a dreamlike romance is Call Me By Your Name. And that everything basically kind of works for the characters. There's no conflict of someone, there's no third wheel, there's... The only conflict
there's kind
is
of
time.
only the conflict that they give to themselves.
Yeah, basically.
And Before Sunrise, it's a ticking clock.
It's a ticking clock, whereas with Call Me By Your Name is the whole social issues of homosexuality and
in that time,
and but never is there like a scene of people looking down on them or
right.
And I'm talking about Call Me By Your Name. There's not an antagonist, like a clear antagonist. And the same thing with Before Sunrise, like there's a moment they kind of they want to get wine and go to a park, and a guy at a bar kind of gives the wine bottle to them without paying. It's almost like everything around them is serving to them at their favor for this one magical night that they're experiencing. And like even with the palm reader, just so many things that just kind of like falls into place. The poet just kind of like being there to write them that amazing poem that really swells my heart every time I hear it.
I like that scene because, like you said, it has this magic, ethereal quality to it, but it's not unrealistic. It has, Ethan Hawke as a cynic responds with, well, he probably writes that same poem to everybody and replaces the name. It replaces. It's it's this magical feeling that's in reality.
Yeah. It's the closest.
I feel like the movie isn't unrealistic, but it is ideal. And I think that's intentional. There's an Ethan Hawke quote that I think we'll probably reference all throughout this podcast, all throughout this episode. But he called Before Sunrise what might be in a dream. He called Before Sunset what could be or what should be, and then he called Before Midnight what is, what life really is like. And we'll probably come back to that quote quite a bit. But I think Before Sunrise is... It remains its realism, it remains its authenticness, because if it didn't, it wouldn't be so relatable and immersive like it is. But it still has this magic quality to it and this ideal quality to it that just gives you this like sweet, warm feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Paloma, do you want to say something?
I think it was a good comparison to Call Me By Your Name. It definitely feels like a whimsical dream that you're like, is this really happening? Like, it feels familiar, but you're also like, there's some sort of realness to it. I think it's written so perfectly, just the way that the only antagonist is time, that's what's keeping them apart.
I want to ask you guys a question, because obviously what kind of starts off the whole night is Jesse asking Celine to come off the train and to spend a day with her. I want to ask you guys, eliminate any sort of person you have in your life, any person you like, whatever. You're on this train and you meet someone, spark. Would you get off the train?
For the time traveler quote specifically?
I mean, yeah.
Because, yes. If somebody came up to me and they gave me that time traveler speech, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going to see where this goes.
Right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is the reason he says that in the movie, it was originally written as something else by Richard Linklater.
Mhm.
And when they started shooting, Julie Delpy told Linklater, hey, I wouldn't get off the train for this. Like, this isn't enough to get me off the train. And he was like, okay, what would get you off the train? And then I think she came up with the time traveler speech, which, if you haven't seen the movie, God, why are you listening to this? But basically...
It's funny because they bring up time traveling in the third one, too.
Mm-hmm. They do that callback in Before Midnight, but...
We'll get to that, but...
he finds her on the train and he says, you know, she says, why should I get off with you? And he says, well, take it this way. I'm a time traveler, and I've just come back from the future where you are really, really sad that you didn't get off the train with me because you're all alone. And so instead, you should get off with me and, you know, change the course of history. And she's like, well, that's clever. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Paloma? Would you? Like,
yeah.
Eliminating any person, like anything right now, any feeling, anything. This guy you connect with, and then he's like, why don't we get off the train? Come explore the town with me. He gives you that speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Just because of the whole romanticizing your life as the main character. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I watched it with my grandma the first time. At first, I think even like when I watched it with my mom, like the third or fifth time I watched it, she was like, don't get me wrong, that sounds nice, but it's like, would I get off the train? And then my grandma kind of came in like, heck yeah, I would get off the train. It's like, why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's such an interesting question that this movie poses.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this very optimistic, adventurous spirit.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on the person that you are too. Like they even mention it in the second one. Like it proves if you're a cynic or a romantic.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you're more romantic, you're gonna be, yeah, this is great. Let's fall in love and let's spend the night together. If you're more cynical, you're gonna think practically and be like, this guy's weird. They don't even know their names until after the train. Right. You remember that? And so
I think there's no way I could in this hypothetical, I could expect it to result in what this movie does, because again, this movie is ideal. Mm-hmm. But it's just like this little moment of adventure.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's more of like you're gonna do something you know you're not gonna forget. Whether or not you fall in love or whether or not you gain something forever, it's more of like, yeah, I got off the train. I didn't stay and think what could have happened.
And at the beginning of the movie, neither of them are expecting falling in love. Like, they do it as this, you know, fun little adventurous thing. Like, oh, yeah, I'll hang out with this guy for the night, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a fun thing. Ethan Hawke just wants to spend time with somebody before he goes home because he can't afford a hotel room, so he just has to walk around Venice all night and not fall asleep. Or, I'm sorry, Vienna. And just not fall asleep. But then by the end, you know, they've connected so deeply that they actually do kind of fall in love. And then this other question is posed of, do we stay together? You know, do we leave this one magical night and let it remain a magical memory? Or do we stay together because we want to be together so bad and run the risk of being tired of each other? And that's a movie that both of the next two movies answer in different ways.
Answer and just explore insanely deeply.
Before
that, I wanted to mention, because I was thinking like, okay, when's the scene that you see them falling in love? And it's probably the best scene in the movie. And one of my favorite scenes of all time, when they're listening to Come Here by Kathy Bloom.
Yeah.
In the recording booth. Like, later on, she mentions, what is that quote that she says? I can feel his eyes when I look away. Yeah. Like, they're perfectly, like, it's perfectly showing them falling in love. Not a single word is said. It's just the two of them standing awkwardly next to each other.
Trying not to make eye contact.
Looking away. looking at each other, looking away. But you can tell in their facial expressions, in the moment, they're falling in love. And it's so
Beautiful.
perfect. It's one of those, it's like one of the perfect uses of like music, shots, acting, facial acting, and just everything that has been building up from then on. You see it happening and you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You just feel it. It's wonderful. I want to see it again now. No, I really want to see it again, like right now. But back to what you were saying, Kolby, about like posing the question of, should we let this be this one thing, or should we kind of continue on? I mean, that they pose that question when they're in the grass, right, together, and whether or not they would want to have sex. And spoiler alert, ultimately they do. Ultimately they have sex. And I think that's kind of what leads them to, we're kind of getting sort of into the second one here, but wanting each other. You know, I think, I mean, there's a reason our parents urge us to not have sex until we're actually married. Because that actual special connection, that physical connection, like, and then with that special someone that you think you're in love with, you can't just spare that with anyone. You really need to like spare that, or like give that to someone you are truly connected with, and you know for a fact you're going to be there, be with them forever.
Yeah.
And from then
From
on,
a romantic point
no
of view,
matter, and no matter how hard it gets,
You're gonna stick with
and I
it.
know that's what these movies kind of explore. You're going to work things through because you're in love and you're together and you guys are kind of like one person. And I think that's obviously not just, of course, just because, you know, they were able to connect that one night, but I think it's because they had sex, they were able to really solidify, yeah, this is the person that I want to be with, or this is the person that I'm going to be comparing everyone else to.
And it also makes them feel lost without each other for the next 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know, like, it's very sad. Like from here on out, it definitely gets more, realistic in how people kind of long for that, either that special intimate connection they first had, or there's one person that they met with who was unlike anyone else they were with, and it didn't work out. And how we kind of long for that one person or that one feeling, and if that's even fair in life to feel, or even fair to kind of deal with and go through. But again, we'll get to that, but this movie kind of basically sits like the stepping stones of those themes, and it's just more of like an ethereal, dreamlike romance of connection, and it's just cute. It's cute as hell. I absolutely love this movie. Do we have anything else to say about Before Sunrise?
One thing that I want to connect back to your Call Me By Your Name comparison is that they both rely so heavily on their setting as a backdrop for their characters, as this kind of beautiful European city for them to explore. And Call Me By Your Name is northern Italy. Here, it's Vienna. And both of them are foreigners to Vienna. One of them much more than the other, because Ethan Hawke is American.
Mm-hmm.
Julie Delpy is from France, but at least she's, you know, European, so she's kind of more familiar with the area. And then I believe she says that she's been there before. The setting of this movie somehow feels like a character in itself, you know? I mean, the whole thing is just them walking around streets. So the streets have to be interesting. Mm-hmm. And there aren't any other real characters in the movie other than them two, but there are these funny little people they meet along the way, like the street poet, or like
the palm reader.
Or, you know, people like that. And I feel like the backdrop of the movie is so romantic and kind of pushes them to be together at all times. Pushes them towards each other in a way that, like you said, is kind of dreamlike. And the way that they don't have a place to stay, the way that they don't have a hotel, but they're just like wandering blindly around this beautiful location. It's so ethereal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this movie is every romantic's fantasy. Like,
For
that's
sure.
what I want. And what's so interesting about it, like Paloma mentioned, the writing being so good, is that Richard Linklater wrote it based on an experience that he had, that he sort of romanticized and idealized, of this girl that he met in Philadelphia, and just spent a night walking around town with, and then didn't hear from again. And we can kind of get more into that real story as we go on with the next couple movies, because those movies kind of explore that idea. But I do just think that the setting is so well written by Linklater.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also love how it's not from a certain perspective of a character. It's both of their perspective. It's a very male and female movie. You know, it's not dominated by his point of view of her point of view of him. It's very perfectly contrasted with each other.
And
I think all
they
three
discuss
movies.
gender dynamics a lot in the movie too.
Oh yeah,
In all
they
three.
do.
Yeah.
And they're funny.
Interesting ways.
Like both have great
Opinions.
points on what they think and opinions and
views of.
and they grow. Like
Yeah.
I think in this one, at some point they kind of believe in what was it? There was something that Jesse asked Celine, like, I think it was predestination. He asked her, like, do you believe in predestination? She's like, yeah, of course. And then the second one, she's like, no, I don't believe in that. Like, I remember, like,
Oh yeah, and then doesn't she say something like, "No, I would have never said that"?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
like what? Like, you can, like, I kind of caught that, like,
Yeah.
upon watching it. And it's like, yeah, like you were saying earlier, Kolby, that these movies are basically not just about people connecting or people and seeing them and their relationships in different times, but seeing them as people in different times. And yeah, again, this is just kind of the stepping stone of what is to come. And magical, absolutely magical. Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are very good looking. They're a very good looking couple. The setting is wonderful. I love their clothing, very iconic looking clothing. The cinematography is simple
But beautiful.
but it's
Intimate.
not. It's intimate and it's not flashy and it's not like
Pretentious.
it's just letting the scene play out, letting them be in the streets, showing the great areas, and in the end, it's bittersweet because again, it poses a question: do they meet again in 6 months or not? And obviously now we know they do, but
Right.
back then,
But this movie leaves that
Could you
unanswered.
imagine watching this movie like when it came out and you're like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna see them again?
yeah, like imagine if this was just the movie, like
Yeah.
nothing else came out. Like, I would love to think, like, yeah, of course they meet together again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I envy people who got to see these when they came
Yeah.
out, when they saw, like, people who saw this in 95 and then
then
Sunset in 2004 and
yeah.
then Before Midnight in 2013, because they kind of grew up with the movie.
Yeah.
And
Oh
like,
yeah,
we're watching these as 20-year-olds, as, you know, near 20-year-olds. The only one of these three we can really relate to is
The
Before
first one,
Sunrise.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's probably why it's like
but-
our favorite.
Yeah,
why
I look
Yeah.
forward to watching Before Sunset in my 30s and Before Midnight in my 40s, and
Like
seeing
having been married with all this experience.
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to that and seeing how relatable those two are.
Mm-hmm. And like if it changes, like, because yeah, I think Paloma already said it, but I think collectively this is our favorite one so far out of all three.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I think
it,
all three of us said this is our favorite.
I think it has
Yeah.
to do with like where we are in our point of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think, and it's not just for me personally. It's not just the fact that I can relate to how I am in my 20s with how they are in their 20s, because there's definitely a lot of things that I can relate to in the second and the third, even in the third one to an extent. But it's all about the way it's shot, the music, the scenes. There's so many scenes. I'm like, oh, this is my favorite scene. Oh, wait, no, this is my favorite scene. Oh no, this part. And then it ends, and you're like, what? Let's see it again. It's one of those I get
Yeah.
excited for to watch
It does not
times.
feel as long as it is.
No, it flies by because their conversations are just so
engaging.
And that's so impressive when it's all dialogue. That's hard to do.
know.
Yeah.
Even like you said, My Dinner with Andre, which is a great movie, it's hard to keep up with. I mean, about an hour into that movie, you kind of have to start putting in more effort to keep paying attention because it's just the same back and forth shot, and it's functional, it works, but I feel like this movie takes what that movie did and explored it.
By going into different locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Do we have anything else to say about this magical movie?
Ratings?
10.
10 out of 10. Without a doubt.
10, yeah.
10 out of 10. Amazing movie.
Easy.
King Rich.
Okay. So now, Paloma, would you like to introduce the next one?
So, following Before Sunrise, we have Before Sunset, which takes place 9 years later in 2004. And we see Jesse and Celine reconnect as Ethan Hawke's character is on a book tour for his book that he just released. And Celine noticed a while ago that he's going to be in town in Paris for the reading of his book tour. And we see them come together and they have a long conversation of catching up and what things would have been like if they had stayed in contact after their first meeting. And it's still very dreamlike in the second one, I believe, especially with like the whole lighting of the movie, the golden hour aspect. I think that plays a very good role into making it feel so dreamy and, again, ethereal. But I really appreciate how in all the movies, as they're having such a strong conversation or just talking about something new, them walking is like a physical like symbol of how their conversation is always moving forward, like just how they are. And I think this one specifically stands out to me. I don't know why. I think it has to do with the sun setting. I don't know. What are your guys' views on the second movie?
Well, you mentioned the book thing, and going back to that story about Linklater and that girl he met in Philadelphia, I think it's really interesting how meta this one gets with that. Because Linklater sort of writes himself into the Ethan Hawke character, into Jesse, because in the sequel, Before Sunset, Jesse's character has written a book that's pretty obviously based on the experience he had in Before Sunrise. And him and Celine actually discuss that. They actually discuss how it feels. She discusses how it feels to have a book written where one of the characters is clearly her, and people kind of judge her based on this idealized version of her. And he writes about having written and made a lot of money off of an experience that he had that was intimate and personal. And that's something that Linklater actually went through. But what's interesting about that real life story, this is a real bummer. I'm sorry if anyone listening didn't know this. Linklater never heard from that girl again, and he was hoping after he made Before Sunrise that he would find her. When he made Before Sunset, he writes this whole movie about, them reuniting, and I think that's because that was his hope. After Before Sunset came out, he found out that she had died before Sunrise even came out. She had been dead all along. And he had based his career off of her. And so I think that, we'll talk about this later, but I think that pretty bummer, shocking realization probably fed into his motivation for the realism and grittiness of Before Midnight.
Yeah.
But Before Sunset is so interesting because, like you said, it still has this dreamlike quality, but it's inching a little bit more towards the realism.
Realism, yeah.
The way I see it is Before Sunrise, they wander into this ethereal state, this otherworldly dream. And before midnight, they're kind of forced into reality. Before sunset, being in the middle of the two makes them choose, right?
Mm-hmm.
It puts them in the middle. And I think in the end they choose the dream, which then results in them later, 9 years later, resulting in Before Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's very complex. And I think it's really ingenious.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard about that too, Kolby, about the fact that I think her name was Amy, the lady.
I'm not sure.
That he met with and basically based off the experience for Before Sunrise. And then, yeah, like he said, I think I saw like in a Q&A that he made the movie, and in the Q&A he'd hoped that she would be in the audience, so that she would raise her hand for a question, or they would meet up and something. It never happened until he found out she died. It's like, whoa, like that's a bummer. And so I think that's really what I think the second one is more in her memory, you know, like basing off of like what it could have been with her, and kind of like honoring her in that way of meeting up with her again, and just kind of making things seem like those 9 years never happened, almost like if it was like 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And but I have to admit, I kind of have an experience like that myself, where I kind of depart from someone, and from my experience I made for me, I don't write books. I want to obviously make films someday. So at the moment I'm making short films, and so I basically made a short film about that certain experience. And who would have thought she kind of was able to come back in a way, and not in the way that I thought, but it happened. And so it's like, as much as the first one is still my favorite and I love it, there are things about the second one that really has opened my eyes to how I've been feeling lately. I mean, there's been moments in the movie, like even like the both of them kind of basically as the movie goes on, kind of admit that they both have been longing for each other for these 9 years, and each person that they've kind of been with hasn't really been the same, or hasn't really. They even mention like the beauty of meeting people is that not everybody's the same. They all have their own unique personalities, their own unique qualities, and what makes them them, you know. And but I think Celine, there's a great moment in the car when she kind of
breaks down,
flat out honest when she says, I was fine until I read your freaking book. And I read it, you know what I mean? Like, I realized I lost something of myself. And I was this romantic person that believed in all this and had dreams, and basically saying, all of the exes that I've been with are married now. They've called me back, and they say, thank you for teaching me what love means. And then she's basically saying, you know, how come I'm not the perfect person for someone? And really longing what she had, like when she did have that perfect person. And there's a lot that I could really relate to, and especially with how I've been feeling lately, of like realizing you're not okay with something that you thought you were, and kind of facing that and what you're willing to do. Are you willing to chase after, or are you willing to move on and become stronger from it? And I think in this movie's case, it makes sense for them to chase it, for them to kind of settle down and kind of, I wouldn't say make sense with it. I think that's just like what they both desired the most. Whereas I guess with myself, it's one-sided, if I have to be honest, sadly. But
right,
it's like, it's still definitely opened up a lot of things of like, yeah, that's how I'm feeling, that's how I'm going through. And it's crazy how honest these movies are, and relatable, when it comes to love, longing, and just hoping over time things just get better, you know?
Yeah.
I think what makes Before Sunset so immersive and powerful is in its screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to cite another podcast, Lessons from the Screenplay, has a really excellent episode about the Before trilogy that I recommend. Their podcast is called Beyond the Screenplay. But they talk about how these movies disguise their structure so well.
Mm-hmm.
How people look at these movies as unstructured movies because they're just conversational. But, hidden subtly, these movies have an impeccable structure. They are very, very, very specifically timed and paced. And Before Sunset is the biggest example of this because unlike the other two, which do have sort of a ticking clock, they are all in one night, but they still, are kind of more easygoing time-wise.
Yeah.
Before Sunset takes place entirely in real time, which is crazy, for one. That's very hard to make that kind of movie. There's no jump cuts, really.
No.
But also, from the beginning of the movie, there's this ticking clock that he has a plane to catch in, like, an hour. Which means the movie's only, like, an hour, 15 minutes. But, they only have, like, in the last one, they only had this one night together. And then they spent 9 years longing to reunite. Now they only have an hour. It's agonizing. And I think that's what leads to that amazing long shot you're talking about in the car, where she kind of has her breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Also, with that shot, I really love how she reaches for his hair and then pulls back in the same way that he did to her in the first one. They have that perfect, like, match.
Great little callback.
Yeah,
I think all three
that
have
parallelism.
Like, the little
I don't know if the third one does. But...
Yeah, and I think in the car on the way back.
Oh, that's right. But that time she actually does touch him.
She does
because now they've been together. Oh, that's beautiful.
Great. Even that has an arc.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know. Like, it's not like they're just kind of rambling, or they're kind of writing a movie of just people just talking about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a purpose and they're like basically a structure to what is happening, and things are kind of brought into the beginning, and they're kind of brought back. Like in the beginning when he mentions, "Do you remember when we had sex?" And she's like, "No." Like, we had sex? Like, what? Even my grandma caught it. Like, she's messing with him. Girls don't forget about that stuff. And obviously guys don't either, but I'm just saying, like, girls would not just say, "Oh, I don't remember having sex with you." Of course you do. And so it comes back later. Like, that's just like one example of of things kind of being set up in the beginning and then coming back, and ultimately at the end, when great final line too.
Oh my god, such a good ending.
Yeah. You're gonna miss that plane, right? And he's like, "Yes, I am."
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am. And then it cuts to black.
Yeah.
And the movie's so well paced and also just so short. I had no idea
that it was so short. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, we're done?
I kind of love that it's so short because it makes the screenplay so tight, but it also makes you want more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the second it ended, I thought there was 30 minutes left, and I was like, no, wait, no. I already need to rewatch this.
I know.
Yeah.
And that made me glad that I didn't have to wait 9 years for Before Midnight.
Imagine.
I had it on DVD.
But I think it's pretty clear, though, that it's implied heavily that he stays, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I recommended these movies to, and my friend fell in love with the movies. I'm glad that everybody that I've recommended to love these movies so far.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend was saying, because I was saying, "Oh yeah, and the third one when they're together," and my friend was like, "Did you just spoil the third one for me?" I'm like, "No, did you not see the second one?" And my friend was like,
"It's pretty ambiguous."
I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And I'm like, "Did you not see what happens at the end?"
Mm-hmm.
He stays. And my friend was like, "What do you mean?" Like, he says, "Yes, I am. I'm gonna miss that plane," and it cuts to black. I think that, I don't know. Like, personally, it was like, I think even if we were to watch it when it came out, I think it was pretty much implied. Oh yeah, he stays, and it's like,
it's implied, but it also leaves you thinking, like, okay,
What
like,
about
after-
his wife?
yeah.
Yeah.
What about his kid? What about all this stuff? So like
Yeah.
again, like in the first one, it's a bittersweet ending.
Yeah.
Mm.
All of them have bittersweet endings.
Tell me
Very
about
much.
Especially the third one.
The third
I
one,
wanted
ugh.
to bring up the kid because I wanted to ask both of you, what was your reaction to him very nonchalantly and subtly dropping this line that he has a child in the second one?
I think it is interesting that he like doesn't bring it up until she kind of like provokes it. But then in the third one, we see like how great of a relationship he has with his son, or like he at least wants to have. It is interesting that he does, like, he just like, yo, yeah, I have a kid. Like, what?
I think like the son is important because like he was saying that's really what's the only reason he's with
like that,
his
yeah.
wife. Like still just to be, because he clearly loves his son. I got that immediately from the second one. That he wants him to have the life that he never had. Like they even mentioned in the first one, like how like parents either give their kids too much or they give them too little. Regardless, they're gonna be envious. Not envious, but like they're just gonna what's the term? You know what I mean? They're not gonna like them at the end of the day. And it's clear, basically, Ethan, Jesse kind of becomes his parents, and he was saying that they both kind of married each other, but they were never in love, and they only stayed for him. That's basically what happens to him with his wife. Because like she brings it up, like, so how's your wife? Oh, she's a good teacher, good person. Okay, but are you in love? Do you love her? Is she great? Is she? It's clear that he doesn't. Like I watched it with my mom, I remember, and she basically told me, Bastian, if you ever feel that way, like if you are like gonna marry someone but you're still longing for someone else, or you feel like you're not complete by this person, do not get married. I repeat, do not get married.
That's some good mom advice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
because you don't want to end up with a before midnight on your hands.
Oh gosh.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, like, obviously, but I mean, it's like it's more of you do not want to be. It's more of it's like it's not fair for you and not fair for that person.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's just not fair in general.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the wife because I'm sure she probably fell in love with Jesse. But Jesse probably was needing a connection, had sex with her, and oh, there's a kid, we need to get married. And I'm just not gonna lie, like a lot of people are like that, sadly. You know what I mean? Like they meet someone and it either doesn't work out or something happens, and sadly in life they meet up with someone they think that can fulfill them, and then a kid comes in, or I don't know, like marriage or something, and they're just not fulfilled. And that's why personally, when it comes to getting over someone, I don't like to kind of have rebounds or to go to someone right after, personally, because it's like it's not fair for them.
Absolutely.
And anything can happen. Like, what if you have sex? Boom, now you have a kid. Or boom, now like all these things. And I think that's just why so many people have like this horrible perspective on love. And like, that's not love. I don't know, like to me, that's not love. To me, love is, God, I don't even know what love is, but I know it's not mistaking it for being unhappy with the person that you're ultimately married with. I know it's so much better than that. But yeah, I think him bringing up his kid is to kind of tell her that's the only reason why I'm with my wife. Because if it weren't for that, I would totally still be I mean, he would totally flat out go for her without any hesitation. And I think that's the only thing that's kind of like bringing him back up, like not completely going forward. Because I can tell he struggles with wanting to be with her, but also knowing he has a kid that he needs to be with. But ultimately, at the end, they choose each other.
I think it's a pretty genius addition to the screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
Because introducing this kid and this wife that's off screen really raises the tension of the will they won't they between Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and it becomes more complicated than I want them to get together, because now there's this moral dilemma. Now there's two other people who will be affected. In the end, I think when he says, yes, I'm going to miss my plane, your first reaction is, yeah, they got together. And then you go, wait, his wife. Wait, his kid. You know?
Yeah.
It becomes this more morally ambiguous thing. Like, do you choose the poetic ending or the rational, the practical ending? And I've always kind of interpreted it as Before Midnight is the direct result of the choice made at the end of Before Sunset.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically.
They can choose this more romantic life, but there's
consequences.
There's going to be hardship, because he can't undo marrying this other woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what ultimately leads them fighting.
Yeah.
We'll get to it, obviously, but that's what ultimately leads to the whole conflict
Argument,
with the third movie. But do we have anything else to say about Before Sunset? So, ratings?
10.
It's a 10. Yeah, another 10.
Even if 10. Before Sunrise is my personal favorite, because it gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling, I do feel like Before Sunset is from like more of a film school perspective. Mm-hmm. It's the best one. It's got the most tight screenplay.
I think everybody agrees that it's the best written one, like the best made one, the most one.
Isn't it like the one that was nominated for best screenplay?
I think so.
I think both of the latter two were. I think both Sunset and Midnight were.
I hope so, because great screenplays.
Yeah.
Great screenplays.
But Sunrise was like ignored, which is a bummer.
Okay, Kolby, introduce the final outing in this Before.
Oh boy, this is where it gets rough.
Intensidado.
Before Midnight is the third movie in the trilogy. It came out in 2013. If you still haven't seen this trilogy and you don't want spoilers,
why are you here?
You gotta dip out now, man. Because Before Midnight, we finally see Jesse and Celine again after 9 years, and this time, unlike the previous two, they have been married. They have been together for all this time, and they actually have 2 daughters.
Really cute daughters.
They're in Greece. We didn't mention in Sunset they're in Paris, because the location is pretty important in this trilogy. The first one's Vienna, the second one's Paris, so that Celine has home field advantage. And then in this third one, they're in Greece, sort of on this summer trip with their kids, staying with some friends and family there who are also some fun characters. This is kind of the only one in the trilogy that really has other characters.
Yeah.
But basically, the main idea behind this one is that they take this one night off from their kids. They have the friends watch the kids while they go to a hotel to spend this night together. It's kind of a special night before they go back home from their Grecian trip. And it's supposed to be a romantic night away. And it starts that way. And it actually, for a while, I was really surprised by how I thought it was going to be darker. I was like, oh, this is actually a lot like Sunset and Sunrise. Like, this is nice. Mm-hmm. This is sweet. And then when they get to the hotel room, the trouble starts slowly creeping into the conversation. And then it rips your heart out so hard. And it becomes really hard to watch. Yeah. Because like Ethan Hawke said, this one is what is. Unfortunately, this one is attempting to be, and is accomplishing being the most realistic one, the most gritty one, and sort of serving as this penance for the previous two. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to watch by the end. Like you you don't want it to go on anymore, but it's also so well made and just the acting's incredible and you just love it and appreciate it, but it also puts you in so much pain. I think where the previous two are kind of about youth and coming of age and this ideal romanticism, this one is kind of like about adulthood and like the masks we wear and the facades, and what's under those, which is something ugly that we don't like to address.
Mm-hmm. And just people settled in. It's just, I mean, it's marriage.
I don't think any of us can speak to this one being relatable or, you know, because we haven't had these experiences. This is a very mature movie.
Yeah.
And we're little babies. But,
have your parents seen these movies? Both of you?
No.
No. So yeah, I watched it with my mom. And I think it's her personal favorite out of all three. Because, yeah, she's at the age of these characters. And again, without getting into details, she has mentioned, yeah, I've been with your dad at hotels together, just me and him, planning to go on this great time. And we do, ultimately, but sometimes we have these fights. It just happens. And I was, like, shocked. Because I can assure you guys, my parents are fine. There's nothing wrong. They're okay, I promise you. They will be together forever. But as any couple, you fight. You argue, and you have things that you need to discuss. And so when they told me that, because they never like fight in front of me, they never raise a voice in front of me or anything. So when I heard that, I was like, really? Like even in vacations? And so I know, Kolby, you have mentioned, like, hopefully that doesn't happen to us in the future. But I think it's just inevitable.
Absolutely. Like, I think that's what this movie's saying.
Yeah. I don't want to make my parents seem like amazing people, even though they are. I love them, and they're the best people in the world. But even my parents, who are devout Christians, and people with values and great similar values and beliefs, they're still people. And they argue and they have conflicts sometimes, but you know what? You settle it. And I think that's what the movie is. Again, like you were saying, it breaks your heart, but it's so well made and well acted that it's like, it's still as great as the other two for different reasons, because it's just showing the reality of them being together and figuring out how to remain together. And yeah, it's just, and again, I think it just breaks your heart more because you saw them come together and you saw them evolve, and so seeing them argue, you're just like, stop fighting. But it's so well made, it's so well written, and so well realized that at the end there's that great arc of how in the beginning Jesse talks about the time traveler and he brings it back.
It all comes full circle. This movie
all comes into full circle.
Ends where the first one began.
Basically, yeah. And
oh my gosh.
What about you, Paloma? I believe you watched this for the first time recently, right?
Yeah. Watching it was really hard to watch because even in their car ride back to where they were staying with their friends, and they're starting to argue more than usual.
There's signs of what's to come.
Yeah. I was like, oh, do I want to finish this? But I have to, but I don't want to, but I want to. Like, I don't want to see it like crumble, you know? So you're watching it and then it's like they're fine towards the middle of the movie, but like once they get to the hotel room, you're just like, okay, like I can sense tension coming once Henry calls her on the phone. It just all goes downhill and you're just like, like, this is the sad truth. Like, I really enjoyed the movie, but I also really didn't, just because it's like breaking down that wall of that fantasy. Like, yeah. And And I think maybe like once we do get older and rewatch it, we'll probably love it even more. But for me right now, it's not like, it's probably my least favorite.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see how our favorites change as we get older.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. We continue this podcast for when we're
just one episode.
Yeah. Oh,
just
for sure. Yeah. I'm already working on the 80th anniversary special edition Blu-ray, so all good. I mean, holograph Ray. I don't know.
Holograph Ray, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so without pushing it off any further, we gotta talk about the fight. We gotta delve into the fight.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What I love about it, but before we kind of get into like the logistics of it, I guess. What makes it realistic is not that it's building up tension, like how movies do it, and then release. It's tension.
Yeah.
Calm. Tension. Calm.
Right. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. That's how arguments are in real life.
She literally, like, it's represented by her going out the door and then coming back to it.
That too, like her
then delivering
sitting on the couch.
The hardest hitting line in the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
Oh. Somebody say it.
I don't think I love you anymore.
You don't want to hear that. You spent 18 years with these characters. You don't want to hear that. Oh, it's so hard.
Seeing him alone in the hotel room, kind of having, like, letting that sink in. It's like
just exhausted.
He sinks into the couch.
You're exhausted too, like with them after hearing such arguments. But yeah, what do you have to say about it, Kolby?
Well, what I hear people say a lot when they talk about this movie is whether they side with Jesse or Celine.
Mm-hmm.
People always say, that's kind of the question. People say, you know, which side did you take? Who do you think was right? And the one I hear most often is actually Jesse. A lot of people talk about how... That's... Okay, I kind of want to hear you guys' take on this, because I keep hearing people say Celine is the villain in this movie. Like, this movie villainizes Celine. And I didn't get that impression. I actually was really surprised to hear that, because not only did I kind of appreciate how well this movie balanced the two and how well it portrayed both of their sides kind of equally and fairly. I really understood Celine in this movie. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to pick her side over Jesse's. I don't think I could pick a side, but I thought Celine was really sympathetic in this movie. I was really surprised to hear that a lot of people were mad at her after the fight. What about you guys?
Paloma, go ahead.
I think Jesse, I kind of side with more, just because he, like, quickly tells her, like, this is how life is, like, just accept it, like, you know?
I think, well, it was clear in the beginning that, like, from the first one, she's a dreamer. She's someone that's not practical like her parents. You know, has great aspirations for life. And then the third one, she's basically asked to kind of stop that. And so in that aspect, I'm with her. You know, I feel sympathetic for her, because it's like, when you're married and you have kids, your life is on pause, and you've got to put your everything for them. And I think, and to be honest, Jesse, not that he was a bad parent or anything, but he had a kid back in the States to take care of and be there for it, and the books that provided the money, provided all the of just them being stable, and the art that he is doing. Whereas I'm guessing she's probably the one at home cooking for the kids, taking them to places, and probably not having all that much time for herself. And I think for years she kind of was okay with it. And now that he brings up, okay, I want to move to the States, she's like, no, I can't do that. So while I don't agree with her going to this extent of saying, I don't love you anymore.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, whoa, take it back. I understand her place of why she's upset and why she just feels the way that she does, because again, we've seen it from the beginning. And I'm not taking sides here. I see both sides for sure. I'm just saying, to say that Celine is the villain of the movie, no, I don't think so. I personally don't think so.
Me neither. I mean, yeah, that's cruel. Like, they're both cruel to each other, though. You know, he's cruel to her, too. I mean, he calls her a bitch, and he delegitimizes her and makes her feel invalid for her point of view. I mean, the logistics of the fight are he feels that he needs to go to the US to be with his son, which would mean relocating Celine and their 2 daughters to come with him. Meanwhile, Celine has just gotten the job opportunity of her life that she's always wanted. And so, of course, they're both so valid. I mean, he needs to be with his son, and that's absolutely important to him, and it should be. But it's not fair to Celine because she's being dragged to the U.S., a place that she has no interest in living. She's been born in Europe her whole life, because of his previous mistake.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. So
it's, and I think the screenplay is smart to introduce you to his son in the first scene because
you build a connection.
That makes you understand them both. Yeah, but I also think maybe that's why people villainize Celine more. Maybe it's because you know, there's sort of a thing in movies, just in film visual language. If a character has more screen time, if they're the protagonist, then no matter what they do, if it's well written, you sympathize with them more, even if they're bad, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe because the very first scene is Ethan Hawke talking to his son, you sympathize with him more from the beginning, and that's why it's easier to see his point than Celine's.
Yeah.
That might be the case.
Maybe.
No,
but
might be. Yeah.
I do think Celine is so... She carries such a burden in this movie. And I think adding those 2 daughters to the screenplay is really smart, too. Because that gives it weight. Without them, I mean, it would suck, but they could separate. He could go back to the U.S. and she could stay in Europe. Mm-hmm. Or, I think probably without them, she would take the more selfless option and go with him to the U.S. But they have 2 daughters who have a life in Europe. You know? It's heavy.
It's heavy. It's heavy for sure. But
for lack of a more accurate word, for lack of a more impact word, it's heavy, Doc.
But I still love that. Obviously, their connection is still there. Like in the beginning, before the actual hotel, them walking to the hotel, you can tell that there's like still there's still the young couple that they met in Vienna and that reconnected again in Paris. They're still enjoying each other's conversations. There's almost like a sense of like, oh, we haven't had this in a while. This feels good. Mm-hmm. You can tell that they've had so much time for their daughters, so much time for him, for his books, her with whatever she is doing. And finally, there's some time for them to be alone together, talking again like they used to. But now that they're settled in and things are happening, let's bring this up, this conversation, and this crazy argument that happens, which leads to a great ending. All these movies have amazing endings. I love when he just kind of walks up to her and he's being the charming romantic and saying, what was he saying? He was like, excuse me for being like forward, but I saw you from like far away and you're by far the best looking woman in this area or something, right? And she's like not having it. And he's obviously, and I love what he says, like at the end, like when she's like, did you not hear what I just said? He's like, what, that you don't love me anymore? He's like, you know what, you're just like the other girls, like wanting to have this romantic fairy tale version of love, or this that everything kind of falls for you and everything is like perfect. And he's like, I put up with your shit, basically.
Mhm.
And I put up with everything, and I'm still here. It's like, it's not perfect, but this is love. This is real life. And if you don't want that, I'm not going to be a dog, like, coming back after all this. Like, I'm not going to be chasing the stick and coming back for you. I'm like, I give up. I'm done. Like, it's either this true love that you want. Like, this is actual, like, you think any other guy is going to be fed up with the shit that you're pulling me through? No. I love you and I'm here for it. But if you don't want that, I'm not going to be chasing after you. I'm done. I love that. Because it's true. Like, I think that's what love is. Like, there's a lot of, obviously, being a Christian, to me, obviously, God is love. But when it comes to, in the case of being with someone, especially after so long, it's like, no matter all the imperfections, no matter all the crap that you go through, I'm here for it. And I'm here to figure it out with you, and I'm here to go through it all. And no matter what, we're going to sleep in the same bed together and say goodnight and wake up in the same bed and just figure it out, you know? And to me, that's love. But
I've heard people refer to the ending as emotional manipulation.
That's what
I've heard people give the argument that Jesse is manipulating Celine with this final speech, and that's not the way I interpreted it.
no.
You guys, neither of you guys did either, I'm assuming.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get the argument, but the way I saw it was these two people are so exhausted, they've had it so hard, that the only real solace they can find is in each other, even if they've both messed up. It's implied that they've both briefly cheated on each other.
Yeah.
Even if she's not sure if she loves him anymore, even if he's been an ass and might relocate them to the US and force her to give up her dream job, even if blah, 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 on and on and on and on, the only solace they can find is in each other because of the decisions they've made in the past, like in Before Sunset. Mm-hmm. Now all they have left is being together. So yeah, it sucks. Like, this movie's pretty pessimistic, but it still gives you that glimmer of hope at the end. And I also just think it's good writing that it comes full circle with the time travel discussion. But I don't know. I've been thinking about that since I heard that argument, and I've been trying to reevaluate that ending and see if I can sort of understand that. Mm-hmm. But to me, it always just came off as a very tired, yet genuine romance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and I love that last line of the movie.
See... Oh, which one?
It's one hell of a night we're about to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
Great stuff. Really quick, their daughters are really cute. Like, I love how it was revealed that they had
that was a great shot.
Twin daughters.
Slowly panning to the back of the car. That surprised me, actually.
It's like, oh,
it did.
Wait, no, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
And they're so cute. They look like their mom. It's great. Heavy movie.
Heavy.
I mentioned before how Before Sunset kind of is a little meta with how Jesse has written this book, which is basically Before Sunrise.
Yeah.
In this one, Jesse has written a sequel, which is basically Before Sunset. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because, again, Richard Linklater is writing himself into these movies, and he's writing his experience having written the previous two movies into the experience of Jesse. But one thing that stuck out to me when he's talking about the books that he's written is he talks about this other one. And this is just kind of, I guess, like my theory. But he talks about this one that's long and has taken him a really long time to write, and is very personal and simple. And the other guys, like, don't really get it when he's talking about it, but he's like, when it comes out, you'll see.
Boyhood.
Yeah. And then I was like, wait, when did Boyhood come out? And I looked it up, and it was 2 years after this, or maybe 1 year after this. And I was like,
what's he like?
Is he talking about Boyhood a year before it came out?
That's right.
Because Richard Linklater had been working on Boyhood for like 12 years at this point.
This man.
That's
this
right.
This man is so smart.
That's right. You were
Can't.
saying, like,
I'm
it's
hoping we'll
about-
talk about Boyhood in a future episode.
And they're
Oh,
all
for
saying,
sure.
"Oh, it sounds pretentious." And some
Yeah,
people
exactly.
think Boyhood's pretentious.
Yeah.
And some people
A
love
lot
it.
of people, yeah. I kind of think he was talking about Boyhood, and that made me so happy. I was like, whoa,
Now I
this
want to
dude's
rewatch
crazy.
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Because I think like when he
So-
describes the book, it's probably describing like a coming of age story.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, yeah.
I think
That
there's a lot
sounds
of
awesome.
meta commentary in this movie.
That's cool. I really like that.
Oh, Richard.
Okay, ratings.
9.
I say 9 too. It's weird because I don't have any problems with the movie. Like, there's nothing
No.
that docks it a point for me. It's just harder to
Mhm.
give a 10 to because it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Honestly,
But it's also
that's
not
why.
supposed to. So I feel like it's perfect in the sense that it does exactly what it wants to accomplish.
Yeah.
But that makes me sad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard to say.
Yeah, I'm torn between like a 9 and a 10. For the same exact reasons. It's like
Yeah.
it's so sad, but it's like it's really
It's-
well done.
Yeah.
And there's no other way it could have gone. I don't think. So
I have a question.
mhm.
Is there another trilogy that holds up to this one? Because I'm a big trilogy guy. I love the perfect symmetry of a trilogy. And so going into this, I didn't think that it would be maybe my favorite trilogy, but now I kind of think maybe it is. I have trouble finding another
Yeah.
trilogy that I think is as consistently perfect as this one.
For
What
me,
about you
it's
guys?
Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
For me, like perfect. All like I rewatched those. Those are perfect. I want to say the original Star Wars trilogy, but Return of the Jedi is definitely the weakest one. But yeah, it would be those three: Return of the Jedi, the Before trilogy, and the Lord of the Rings. Sorry, Star Wars trilogy, Lord of the Rings, and the Before trilogy.
I personally don't have like a favorite besides this one. I mean, I do, but it doesn't
So-
compare to this one at all.
So, Twilight.
No.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure.
No, that's not even a trilogy.
Oh, it's like what?
It's a
10
saga.
movies?
That's 4.
Which one?
It does not compare, y'all. I swear. I know it
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay, but-
compare.
Halloween.
No. It's literally like
Is it bad? But you just like it?
yeah, obviously it's a guilty pleasure.
Say it.
And it's not Twilight?
It's High School Musical.
Oh my god. Well, I'm
I love it.
surprised.
No,
I
but
love
I
it.
know it's not. I know where it stands. Like, it's just my guilty pleasure.
Kolby's like gone.
Kolby's
right now,
like-
ladies and gentlemen.
Kobe's like, why did we accept her into this
That-
podcast?
that's,
Why
I love
is she
it. That's
here?
perfect. That makes me happy.
High School Musical. I haven't
That's
seen it in
amazing.
Years.
You know what's funny is I've actually seen a resurgence on like film Twitter and Letterboxd of people talking about High School Musical 2 as like a genuinely like great film, and I'm like, where is this coming from? Why now? But it's funny, so I guess I have to rewatch it or something. I guess.
I guess.
Maybe we
I haven't
can
seen it
talk
since it
about
came
them
out when I was a
sometime.
kid.
No, I know they're not
Yeah.
comparable to the
That's
Before
funny, though.
trilogy, but if there's a trilogy that I love just as much, I'm gonna be honest, it's High School Musical.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, Seb, mine are the same as yours. The only ones that could compete with this for me are Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And I would sooner say that those are my favorite movies. Like, Star Wars is my favorite trilogy because it means the most to me. The Empire Strikes Back is in my top 5 favorite movies.
Well,
Star Wars is just really special in my heart, and I've
Yeah.
loved it since I was a kid, and it's like probably the reason I want to make movies.
mhm.
But I don't actually think that the original trilogy is, from a writing standpoint, like as consistently perfect as this one is. I just like it more personally, you know?
Yeah. It's closer to your heart.
I think Empire is a perfect movie. New Hope and Return of the Jedi both are kind of wonky, but are
Mhm.
great, and I love them, and that's kind of what makes them special.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is similar. I think Fellowship is a perfect masterpiece. I think Return of the King is pretty dang great. Two Towers is...
Dang, apparently
is
people don't
good.
like Two Towers as much. That's
I
crazy.
like Two Towers a lot. I mean, it's just my least favorite.
Jeez,
'cause-
I don't agree with that.
But I like it. It's good.
Okay.
Anyways, again, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, I love. They have very special places in my heart. And I would probably say they're my favorites before I would say Before Trilogy, but I actually think Before Trilogy is probably the most consistently great from a writing standpoint.
I would agree.
And I struggle to think of any other trilogies. I mean, Back to the Future 1 and 3 are great, but 2 is okay.
Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy.
That's true, but those aren't a trilogy. They're trilogy. They're not sequels. I love them. I love the Man with No Name trilogy, but that's the same way, where those aren't really connected. Paloma.
Yeah.
Would you or would you not want to see a fourth movie? Before Twilight or something like that.
Wait, before
some
when
other
they're like
time of day.
in their 60s.
I guess it would be 50s. Because, right? It'd be 50s?
It would be in the 50s, yeah.
Would you guys or would you not want to see that?
I think it does come into full circle. However, I would welcome a fourth.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
wouldn't be opposed to it, but I wouldn't be like, yeah, I want to see it. Like if it happens, then I'll be excited.
Heck
I'll be
yeah,
excited.
I'm gonna go see.
But I'm
Thursday
not
night.
like Richard Linklater. You better make one, like, you know.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like, I love the symmetry of this trilogy, and I want it to maintain that. But at the same way, 3 being the only number that a series can be is arbitrary, and so why not 4? But at the same time, I look at movies like Toy Story 4, which in my opinion is so unnecessary and like kind of, in my opinion, is counterintuitive to the ending of Toy Story 3. It like retroactively makes Toy Story 3 less impactful.
Yeah.
And I don't want.
Yes, thank you.
I don't want a movie that does that to Before Midnight. So.
Yeah.
Anyways, Richard Linklater, since you're definitely listening, that's our thoughts.
So if you want to make one,
Yes.
we're not telling you to, but
We're not telling you not to, but be careful.
if you
do
do decide,
Stop listening to you.
just invite us to the premiere.
Right. Well, put us in it.
Yeah.
You know.
Give us
Or put us in it for like
I'll be your PA.
pretentious-
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay.
film students or something.
I want to play the son of the street poet from the first one. All right, we're getting into the world building now. Okay.
World building.
We're getting into that Force Awakens style legacy stuff.
I'll play the granddaughter.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
Great.
I'll just-
No, me and Seb can be the twin daughters grown up.
Oh.
We'll put on
Yeah.
blonde
Yes.
wigs. It'll be good.
We'll put on blonde wigs. That's it. We'll just put on blonde wigs. That's it.
Yeah, and Paloma can be Henry.
This one. I already got it.
Perfect.
Exactly. Okay. Guys, that was our complete, thorough thoughts on
The
the
Before
Before
trilogy.
trilogy from Richard Linklater. If you haven't seen it,
Watch it.
why were you listening? You should have seen it before, you
Before.
freaking weirdo.
Guys, what have you been watching lately?
So just yesterday, I finally watched Do the Right Thing, and I'm honestly embarrassed to say this because I feel like I'm embarrassed that I still hadn't seen it until yesterday because it's such a classic, but I'm also so glad that I watched it for the first time exactly when I did, because it is like shocking and scary how relevant that movie is to 2020 specifically. Spike Lee has a prophetic gift, and Do the Right Thing I really do think is a masterpiece. I think it's my favorite film I've seen from him yet, for sure. It balances very big over the top style without losing its substance. It's an incredibly nuanced discussion of race and class, and it's like the most complex race movie I've seen, and it makes me very angry that it lost to Driving Miss Daisy, and then like later Crash and Green Book won. Like, all right, I just ugh.
It came out at the same time as Driving Miss Daisy.
Driving Miss Daisy looks like the original Green Book.
It is.
Oh, it is. I've seen it. It is.
Yeah.
Like we didn't need Green Book. After
Yeah, it didn't even get nominated, and then Driving Miss Daisy won, and then
Wow.
almost 15 years later, something like that, Crash wins Best Picture, which is a sanitized like rip-off version of Do the Right Thing. It just. Anyways, I'll be positive. Do the Right Thing's great. Go watch it.
What about you, Paloma? What have you been seeing?
Okay, y'all are gonna get mad at me, but Seb already knows, but I just recently watched Whiplash for the first time.
Yeah!
Oh my gosh, y'all. I mean, you already know.
So, wait.
Like,
you said you listened to that episode of the podcast. Did we spoil it for you?
No, I
Thank
forward
God.
through that
Okay.
because I was like,
Thank
oh
God.
no, I'm not gonna do
we
myself
spoiled the hell
dirty
out
like
of it,
that.
that's why.
Yeah.
I know. No, I had been meaning to watch it, never got around to it, but once you guys put out that episode, I was like, okay, I need to watch
Right,
it.
It's
Like,
time. It's time.
it's time. Like, I need to get to it. So I finally watched it. I made my parents watch it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my dad loved it. My mom hated it. Well, she can enjoy it. She can appreciate it, but
Was it because she
Anyways.
was stressed out or what?
Now we
yeah.
have to have her on the
Okay,
podcast so we can debate.
But that's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
How much anxiety it gives you.
From playing jazz. That's crazy.
I know, the most relaxing type of music.
Don't tell Damien Giselle that. He'll yell at you.
I know. He'll throw
No,
a chair
I
at you.
literally. It's easily one of my top 20. Like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's amazing.
I don't know how I have been going about my life without seeing that movie. I mean, you guys get it.
Yeah.
And then I also saw Terms of Endearment with Shirley MacLaine.
Okay.
It's alright.
It's alright?
Say,
It's alright.
Okay. I haven't seen that.
It
Looks pretty good though.
was a pretty movie. I
Yeah.
don't see how it's Best Picture worthy.
Oh, I
Because
won the
apparently
picture?
it won Best Picture. Yeah.
Well, you know the Academy.
Yeah.
They've always been hacks.
Yeah. I don't think it was Best Picture worthy, but that's alright.
Yeah. I'm glad you finally watched Whiplash. That's like, oh.
Me
mwah.
too.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
I
I was literally speechless after.
No, yeah. I think that's like the first time for everybody. You're just kind of like,
I was like, oh, I
yeah,
can't even say.
that's great. Well, you guys watched great artistic masterpieces. I finally watched Hot Rod.
Rad!
You saw Hot Rod?
I
Oh my
finally
gosh,
watched
it's
Hot
so
Rod.
funny.
And it's hilarious.
It
and I
is.
loved it.
Why do you
loved
say
it
that like
a lot.
Hot Rod isn't a great artistic masterpiece?
You know what? You're right. It's Criterion worthy. I loved it.
Really?
I wouldn't say Criterion worthy, obviously. I'm joking. But
Well,
I
you
loved
did,
it.
So. Now it's recorded for all future prosperity. Posterity. What is it? I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah, I was having a bad day. That day I watched it, and I'm like, you know what? Hot Rod's on Hulu. Let's watch it. Instant mood boost. Holy crap.
Mood lifter.
Hilarious. I loved it. It's so silly and so
It is.
dumb.
Stupid.
Yeah, but it's like fully aware.
When they start singing before he does what is it that he's doing to prove to his dad?
When they start what?
When the whole city just like starts
Oh
going
yeah,
into,
they start
like,
kind of
song.
singing, and then there's a riot.
I'm like,
that
what is
happens.
going on?
That
yeah,
was
I'm like,
amazing. Yeah,
there's
okay,
a whole riot
basically,
going on. They
before, like, it's nearing the end of the movie, before he does like his big stunt, and they're kind of like walking confidently to the area of where the stunt's gonna be, and then like the town behind them kind of joins them walking, and then they break into this musical number of like them just basically lifting him up. And then it immediately
start
kind of
rioting.
becomes into a riot of people killing each other. There's fires, explosions. It's hilarious.
It's
I
so
love it.
stupid.
It's so dumb. And I love it because it's like fully self-aware about it. And yeah, fun movie.
That's what I love about his movies, The Lonely Island.
The Lonely Island. We gotta watch like Pop Star someday. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I guess we could have done
they're
that with
all,
our Palm
like,
Springs
self-aware.
discussion,
Low key.
but
Andy Samberg.
Just
movie.
the Andy Samberg. Yeah.
It's cool. No, yeah, that's. And I don't know if you guys heard about that new short film by Damien Chazelle.
I watched it. It was good.
It's good. It's.
Yeah.
I want to know what you guys think about it though, with the whole vertical, the way that it's shot
Right.
vertically.
I
on
mean,
the iPhone.
it's a gimmick, and it's
Mhm.
promotional. But I thought he did a very good job directing it. I thought some of the shots were really interesting the way they were framed. I was impressed, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a promotional short film for Apple,
Yeah.
but it was cute. I liked it. It was
Yeah,
very
it
well
was cute.
directed.
It was very Damien
It was a simple
Chazelle,
story.
for
It
sure.
felt like a live action Disney short.
Yeah.
Almost like Day and Night or the one with the umbrellas that I can't remember the name of, but it's a small, short, cute gimmick, gives you a nice little story, but the real meat of it is the visuals.
Yeah. Yeah, he was able to really capture visuals vertically. Oh, that's like an interesting shot. Oh, like that's cool. That, you know what I mean? Like, so, and obviously I'll watch anything Damien makes. So, yeah, that's what I've been watching. So, Kolby,
So Seb,
what are we doing next time? Tell us.
well, okay, we are hoping that our next episode will be a very special episode where we will finally review Tenet and then talk about our favorite Chris Nolan movies. Everybody has been dying for this all year. However, COVID-19 is still happening. We cannot ignore it. Wear your masks.
Corona.
Social distance. And
Corona
if it
is
gets
a hoe.
delayed again, if there are complications with us seeing it as soon as possible, because of that, we do have a plan B, which I won't get into, but it's something kind of funny and goofy that we can review, and then we could do Tenet like the week after that. So next episode might be Tenet, might be something goofy. You'll have to tune in to see, or just look at the thumbnail, I guess. But yeah, hopefully special Tenet episode next week. If not, it'll be the week after.
I'll have it for sure, like updated on Instagram.
Sure.
For sure. Yeah. Or however, but yeah, hopefully that's how it goes. If not, we'll see.
Good stuff.
But,
Good stuff.
Yeah, good job, guys. We had fun.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah.
Please give us your money.
What?
Support us on Patreon.
We have a
If you don't
Patreon.
have a Patreon, we're kidding.
Our Patreon
we
is
hope
just
to have
Seb's
one
wallet.
someday.
Just hand him a crisp dollar bill,
Just Venmo me 50
and he
bucks,
will
please.
pocket it.
Please. No, but yeah. Until next time, you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody. I'm gonna go rewatch
Thank
Before
you.
Sunrise.
Me too. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.